All right, let's put the 10 most important conference games up, and I'm ready for everybody to yell. We're going to go from 10 to 1 here.
10 to 1.
Have fun with people on audio that are listening.
Let's go 5 to 9.
No, we're not doing that.
And then we'll go 10 to 4.
No, I already feel dyslexic thinking about that. Number 10, Oregon at Michigan.
Yep.
David. Now, Oregon does host Ohio State. We're going to get there. But if we're looking, and this is going to play out in my mind like I think it's going to play out, not to predictions yet. But if Oregon wins this game, I think there's a pretty good chance they go undefeated in the regular season. I really believe that. I've said that I think they're going to beat Ohio State at home. This would be the one to me, because this is week what, David, that they play this game in?
This is November 2nd. This is the first Saturday in November.
That's my birthday. So we're into the season, decent amount, obviously.
Like week 9.
Could this be the clincher of Oregon getting into the Big Ten championship game? Could possibly be. I think it's a massive game. We're going to find out about Michigan and Texas. I know we're going to get to that as well. But Michigan and Oregon, the 10th most important conference game in 2024.
Yeah, and this will be 3 weeks after they host the Buckeyes.
I do have Oregon's schedule right here if you want to roll through it really quickly.
Hit it quickly.
All right, Idaho, Boise, week 2 at home, week 3 at Oregon State, week 4 at UCLA, Michigan State at home, Ohio State at home, at Purdue, Illinois at home, at the Big House, Maryland at home, at Wisconsin, and you end the year with Washington at home.
Okay, so probably won't be able to clinch, but you'll feel really, really good about where you're at.
And this matchup is a great example of how, yes, talking about, to his point earlier, college football seems to be changing every day, and it's annoying to keep up with, and you got this conference expansion, conference reduction, conferences going away like the Pac-12, but this is a matchup like, oh, wait, Oregon's in the Big Ten now. This is a regular season matchup. This is one of those games that helps us during the regular season decide who's in and who's out in the college football playoff, because you can only sustain so many losses.
That's exactly right. Then number 9. All right, you know this one. Alabama goes to Tennessee.
Remember what happened last time?
Remember what happened last time? The goalpost ended in the river. When I look at Alabama's schedule, this is one of the few games I look at and go, uh-oh, this one could be trouble. This one and the Georgia game. And why I think this one is so important, I would be shocked if there were 2 teams in the SEC championship game that played each other that had 2 conference losses apiece.
Yeah, I would too.
So if you're Alabama and you drop a game to Georgia, all right, now I want you to go through Alabama's schedule here in 1 second as well, Blaine. Well, there's one. All right, if you go through Alabama's schedule, if they lose to Georgia and they lose to Tennessee, I don't think they make the SEC championship game, which then it turns into, can you get an enlarged bid on the back end or whatever. So this is, and for Tennessee, you go through Tennessee's schedule, right? It's not the hardest schedule in the world. And if they're able to take care of business against Oklahoma early in the year and get confidence with Nico, they got to play NC State as well, but that's out of conference. This could be a game that keeps Tennessee not only in the hunt for an SEC championship appearance, but for a college football playoff appearance too, even if they don't make the conference championship.
Yeah, and they'll play Alabama. Tennessee will play Alabama the week after they host Florida. Yep. And keep in mind, they will have already had to go on the road to Norman, Oklahoma with their young quarterback. Now, for Alabama, like you said, if they lose to Georgia and Tennessee, that was your scenario, they have to play Missouri the very next week in Tuscaloosa, then go to Baton Rouge to play LSU, and still have Oklahoma on the road and the Iron Bowl. You got to be 10-2 to have a shot.
This is why we have it on here. This is a hinge game, I think, for Alabama and Tennessee, but people are expecting a little more out of Alabama than they are of Tennessee, even though Tennessee, is sneaky like a peeping Tom in a rich neighborhood.
Do you want this full schedule?
Yeah, let's go through it real quick.
All right, let's go. Western Kentucky at home, USF at home, week 2 at Wisconsin, week 3, Bulldogs, week 4 at Vandy, South Carolina home at Tennessee, Missouri at home at LSU, Mercer at home at Oklahoma, and Auburn.
That 3-game stretch right there that kicks off with this one, David. I'm with you. That could be a season.
And for the people already in the chat, the reason why, I'm sure y'all can explain it a lot better, that Texas and Oklahoma is not up here because we don't think that game's going to have significance on the playoffs.
Yeah, well, we think it's because we have Texas up here in another one. The reason for Oklahoma, and again, we don't hate Oklahoma. We don't think that Oklahoma is going to have a huge bearing on who makes the college football playoff and who doesn't, because we don't think they're going to have that big year in year one going into the conference. Look, if we were just going to do rivalries, we'd have put Auburn, Alabama on there.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
we don't
yeah.
have, I mean, yeah, we got Michigan, Ohio State, but that's a game that we think is going to shape the college football.
No, these aren't the best conference rivalries in the country. These are the games that are going to have the most impact to make the college football playoff. And yeah, to their point, and maybe it ends up shaking out. Maybe the Red River Shootout does end up being one of the ones.
I wouldn't be shocked.
I just don't know with Oklahoma's schedule right now if that's going to end up being one of the deciding factors to make the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, I don't. Again, I think the Tennessee-Oklahoma game, I know rivalries are the most important to the fan bases together, but I think that game is just as important from a national perspective, from a Southeastern Conference perspective, than Texas and Oklahoma playing at the Fair. All right, number 8, we're going to go to the Big 12. I think this is the only Big 12 matchup we have on here, and it is Utah going to Oklahoma State. If Utah wins this game, I think not only do they win the Big 12, I think they go undefeated in the regular season and are one of the top 4 teams that get a bye into the college football playoff, because I don't believe Utah plays Kansas State, correct?
That's why this game is so massive right here, because Utah and Kansas State do not play, and Utah has to go on the road to play Oklahoma State, which means if you fall in that one and Oklahoma State only loses one other conference game, which they do have to go on the road and play Kansas State, then you would lose the head-to-head, and Utah could find themselves not in the
on
conference
the outside looking in. You could have Oklahoma State playing Kansas
That's why this
State
game is so massive.
It's absolutely massive. The only one we had in the Big 12. There's maybe a couple more we could have looked at, but none that are going to have that significance of these two teams do what we think they're going to do. All right, we got Alabama again at number 7. This is one we mentioned, right after the Alabama-Tennessee game. Bama's got to go to Baton Rouge to play an LSU team. And guys, I went back and I looked through LSU's schedule last night once again. If you look, there's a really, really decent chance that if LSU beats USC, they're going to be 5-0 playing Ole Miss, which could be a massive, massive game, which we don't have LSU Ole Miss up here, but that one was on the periphery of some we looked at. But again, if you are Alabama, or if you are LSU, some people think LSU can have a big year, even though they had to replace a lot. It can't be much worse on defense. This is another one of those games where if you're gonna drop a conference game, right? This makes the Georgia game even more important. But this is one I don't think Alabama can afford to lose if they want to make the SEC championship.
So I think the same thing about this LSU-Alabama matchup that I think for Tennessee-Alabama. Right now, I don't have LSU or Tennessee making the college football playoff, but I think they're right there on the cusp to be able to be in the conversation. It's sort of like both those teams have to show it to us first. Well, if you're going to show it to us, then the Alabama game for each of these programs becomes that much more massive.
And can we bring up LSU's schedule real quick, Flaming?
I got it already.
Can you go through it really quickly?
Yeah, USC week 1, Nichols week 2 at South Carolina, week 3 UCLA at home, South Alabama at home, Ole Miss at home, at Arkansas, at A&M, Bama at home, at Florida, Vandy at home, and you finish the season with Oklahoma at home.
So if LSU drops that game at home, let's just play the hypothetical game, drops that game at home against Ole Miss, this to me is a must-win at home against an Alabama team that's going through that stretch that we just listed to keep yourself in the SEC championship hunt and obviously to keep yourself in the chance to get that automatic guaranteed spot in the playoff. But guys, I mean, if LSU goes 11-1 and loses to Ole Miss or loses to Bama, I think they're in the SEC championship game. I don't think they're
one more
gonna
time.
do that. If LSU goes 11-1,
yeah.
like they're in the SEC championship.
Yeah, I don't think at that point it's going to matter who you lost to. I mean, unless there's some weird scenario where it's just, again, the more you expand the conference, the fewer teams get to play each other.
No divisions.
And so you'd have to have a tiebreaker scenario. But if we're talking about 3 11-1 SEC teams, I'll be surprised.
I'd be surprised too. All right, number 6, we go to the ACC, our only ACC matchup. Miami and Florida State. That is a rivalry, but guys, these are two of the top teams in the ACC. I believe FSU right now, or Miami or FSU is the betting odds favorite to win the ACC. I can't remember off the top of my head. I want to say it's Florida State. Guys, this is a game that's at Miami. I know Miami doesn't have a great home field advantage. This one's going to be rocking, though, especially if Miami does some of the things that some people are expecting them to do. But I think the winner of this game, boys, this could be a situation where they play again. Right, where they end up playing twice. But you still got Clemson out there. You got sneaky teams like Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, SMU, I think is really sneaky. So this could be a de facto knockout game for one of these teams if they lose it and drop another.
I do have the odds on the ACC winner of conference right now. Is Florida State plus 250, Clemson plus 350, Miami plus 400, then NC State plus 600.
I like that plus 400. A couple more reasons why this game has major implications. One, Florida is not in the ACC. And Miami's going to open with them, and Florida State's going to close with Florida. Florida could beat both those teams at the beginning and the end of the year, but that doesn't count as a conference loss. And keep in mind, the winner of this conference is going to not only make the playoff, they're going to get a first-round bye. And another thing to keep in mind, Miami and Clemson do not play each other in the regular season. Florida State and Clemson do. Also, Florida State's going to play Notre Dame, which we didn't have any Notre Dame games on here because they're not in a conference. It technically can't be a conference matchup. But again, how does Notre Dame go throughout the season? How does that Notre Dame-Florida State matchup go? How do the out-of-conference games with Florida go for both these programs? And then this one right here, which is going to be in Dade County, massive implications.
Could we have a situation, and again, this is what makes this new playoff so fascinating at the end when you're trying to figure out who makes it and who doesn't. Could we have a situation where, let's say, Miami and Florida State in the regular season with the exact same record, but Miami beats Florida State, okay? Let's say Clemson and Miami play in the ACC championship game. Let's say Miami loses that game, but they beat Florida and Florida State lost to Florida. Do you think we could have, I know they're going to have a tie-breaking game head-to-head, but could we end up having a linchpin where it depended on how either of those teams did against Florida to see who makes it in?
So what you're saying in that scenario, I'm trying to keep up here. Clemson won the conference and got the bid?
Clemson wins. Let's say Clemson wins the conference and gets the bid and Miami doesn't. Or let's say, let me put it to you in these terms. Let's say Miami finishes 11-1, Florida State finishes 10-2. Miami plays Clemson in the ACC championship game and they lose. So Miami is 10-2. Florida State
they'd be
11-2. Florida State is 10-2, right? But Miami is coming off a loss. Florida State beat Florida. Miami lost to Florida. Or do they say, you know what, tiebreaker head-to-head? That's what's gonna. I would hope they do.
I think you got to go head-to-head. But again, I'm just seeing flashbacks of Florida State getting left out of now a 12-team playoff.
No way. There's no way.
And Clemson gets the automatic bid.
Again, it just adds.
Hey, look. Again, the head-to-head has to matter.
It has to matter, right? That's got to be the number one tiebreaker. All right, number 5, Ole Miss and Georgia. Boys, this one right here. Woo! Georgia goes to Ole Miss. Ole Miss has built their team to be able to try and compete up front, or at least get close and let the rest of the pieces win it for them against Georgia. All right, I think there is a decent shot these teams play twice. I think they play, when they play each other in the regular season, I think there's a decent chance they play in the SEC championship game. But the winner of this one, especially if it's Ole Miss with their schedule, has an absolute yellow brick road, deliciously filled, nice path with the chocolate river right next to it, right to the SEC championship game, and pretty much a guaranteed lock to make the playoff. If not the top 4, then with an at-large bid. And I think there's a chance Ole Miss could beat them. You look at Georgia's schedule, it's massive for them too. Because if you drop this one, you still got what? Bama? You still got Texas?
You got Ole Miss over there?
Pulling it up now.
Can you rattle off Ole Miss real quick?
I can, David, just for you too.
Rattle that bad
Thank
boy
you.
off.
All right, week 1, you got Furman at home. Middle Tennessee State, week 2 at home.
2-0.
Then you're going to play the Demon Deacons week 3,
3-0.
Wake Forest. Your boys, Georgia Southern at home. Then you got
4-0.
Kentucky at home.
5-0.
At South Carolina.
6-0.
At LSU.
That one's going to be tough.
Oklahoma at home. At Arkansas.
Okay.
Georgia at home. Woo! At Florida. And you end the season, the Egg Bowl, baby.
So by the time you get to this game where you host Georgia in Oxford, you will have already played LSU on the road and you would have hosted Oklahoma. Let's say you split those and you take care of business against everyone else. You're sitting there at 8-1 hosting Georgia.
And this is massive. Here's what Georgia, obviously, we know what they are. The Death Star, they're looking like the new Bama of old. But I look at that Florida game after they play Georgia, and there's no bye week in between, and it's on the road.
There is.
There is a bye week.
Ole Miss has a bye week between Georgia and Florida.
Oh my God, that's huge. Okay, never mind then. But they go to Gainesville.
Yes.
But still, you got a bye week. That's massive. I think this could end up being one of, if not the best regular season college football game, with Georgia going to Ole Miss. And then 4, David, I mean, Ohio State, Michigan, that was pretty much self-explanatory.
The game, I mean, Michigan's won 3 straight of these, 2 at home, 1 on the road. Like we've been talking about, Ryan Day got $20 million to keep this roster together, to go to the transfer portal, get two of the best players from the SEC, Caleb Downs, Quinshon Junkins. Now you're going to host Michigan this year, last game of the season. By then, we may already have a conference championship game picture like we talked about. But again, Michigan, for all they lost and Jim Harbaugh going to the NFL, they're still going to return maybe the best defense in the country. Still got to figure out who's playing quarterback. But it's good to see this game be inside the top 5 because that's where it belongs.
Well, and if you think about the Big Ten, and when you look at Oregon's schedule, because Oregon has to play Ohio State at home, and then they go to Michigan. If Oregon goes and beats Michigan, right, on the road, if they beat Ohio State at home and they beat Michigan on the road, I'm not saying they will, win both of those, but if they do, then I think this is your de facto who plays Oregon in the conference championship
for the repeat of the conference championship
game. Because again, they both would have lost to them, right? Mm-hmm. So Oregon's going to be in if that happens. So the winner of this game, and there's no reason Ohio State shouldn't win this game. There's absolutely no reason, in my opinion, right now looking at it. But we'll see with Michigan, and we're going to know early with the quarterback situation with them playing Texas.
There's been a lot of Alabama teams who went in the Iron Bowl who had no reason to lose that game.
No, I'm talking about. I'm not saying either team could win this game. It's a rivalry game. Mm-hmm. But when you look at all the things that are stacked in Ohio State's favor, I think they got a better roster, right? I think they got more stability on their roster, which is making it better. They're playing at home. They understand the sense of urgency after being embarrassed, and Ryan Day knows he's probably fired if they don't win this game or he didn't win a national championship. So you have stacked everything into this year, and if you lose that game at home to Michigan, that keeps you out of the Big Ten championship game, and you lose 4, Ryan Day's gone.
Here's the best way to say it, I think. Every single thing we said about Michigan preseason this year can now apply to the Buckeyes. Bringing back over a dozen
100%.
seniors. Hungry after a disappointing end to last season, right? Head coach, you still got your same head coaches last season. Michigan's
what did they not
situation.
bring back, David?
Yeah, well, you don't bring back like a C.J. Stroud, a quarterback. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's not 100% comparable. And look, you know who I'm going to be pulling for in the game. I'm just saying all the things that we said, these are the reasons that Michigan should be good 1 year ago today and saying, hey, it's time to go win the whole thing with all this year returning. That's a very similar thing that we can say about the Buckeyes.
Without a doubt. All right, number 2, number 3, Texas and Georgia. Another massive matchup in the Southeastern Conference. There's a lot of Georgia. There's 3 Bamas and 3 Georgias on here.
Are you surprised?
Not at all. And again, if we're going to talk about shaping the college football playoff, especially at the top, these are the games you have to look at. To me, this puts the winner in the driver's seat to go ahead and get that locked-in appearance in the Big Ten championship game and puts them in the driver's seat in the Big Ten championship game regardless. Because if you're Oregon and you beat Ohio State at home, you can actually go lose that game to Michigan later in the year and still be fine, have the tiebreaker, get in the Big Ten championship game. I know Penn State's hanging around somewhere out there. I get that. I'm just not ready to go ahead and jump all in with James Franklin and them yet with Drew Aller. But this game is absolutely massive. It puts you in the driver's seat for the Big Ten. And I think it gives you a first impression of who Oregon is going to be in the Big Ten, David.
You got Texas' schedule real quick?
God, do I. Ready to go. Week 1, Colorado State at home. Obviously, week 2 in the Big House versus Michigan.
Yep.
UTSA week 3 at home. Louisiana Monroe week 4 at home. Mississippi State at home. Oklahoma at home. Georgia at home. Then at Vanderbilt. Florida at home. At Arkansas. Kentucky at home. Then obviously you finish the year at Texas A&M.
See, this is where the Red River Shootout does come into play because by the time we get to this game right here, Texas-Georgia, which again is a conference matchup now. I mean, that's one of the best things about Texas and Oklahoma.
Oregon and Ohio State, Georgia and Texas, those are conference
matchups now. By the time we get to this, 1, Texas will have gone on the road to Michigan in week 2 to play a non-conference game, and they will have played their biggest rival in Dallas in the Red River Shootout, and Georgia will have already gone on the road to play Alabama. Let's just say there's a loss in there somewhere for these teams. This game becomes even that much more important. Not just for the conference, but for the overall college football playoff picture.
Without a doubt. All right, we're going to get Clint Lamb on here in 1 second. Our number 1 most important game, and you can make an argument for a lot of games on this list, Alabama and Georgia. The 2 juggernauts of the SEC in the recent past and in the past, too, when you look at what Nick Saban did at Alabama. This is a barometer game, in my opinion, for both teams because unless I've totally lost my mind, this is the biggest game. I know Clemson's a big game for Georgia, but as far as where it is in the year and when the game is being played, this is the first really humongous test against a roster that is probably just as good or better than yours for each team, depending on how it shakes out.
Yeah, this is week 5 of the season. The reason I voted this number 1 is not only is it just always awesome to see Alabama and Georgia playing each other, and this is a rematch of the SEC championship game last year, but this is the first time we get to see it in the regular season with no more divisions. Now we're going to see Georgia go on the road and play Alabama on a college campus, not in a domed stadium, not in Atlanta, not in Mercedes-Benz. We're going to see them actually play at Bryant-Denny, and like we said, week 5, that could be the determining factor of who makes the conference championship.
Without it, I don't think these teams will play again, Alabama, Georgia. I think there's a decent chance Georgia and Ole Miss play again, not because Ole Miss is that much better than Alabama, but I think Ole Miss's schedule lends to that better than Alabama's does, especially when we talk about that 3-game stretch. Hey, what's up, YouTube? If you're afraid of dragons, well, you're probably not going to like this show, but I know you aren't, so hit subscribe.